past 8 o'clock. Thank you very much again for coming and joining us today for our monthly Nile Talk Forum, where we invite experts and researchers to talk about different topics, including water management, governance, hydrology, hydropolitics. We also talk about transboundary water management experiences, dam simulations, water sharing principles, international water laws, droughts and floods forecasting, negotiations, water budget, and more. So this is really a forum where we invite different experts to talk about their experience. So we don't have any limitations as long as it's on Nile and transboundary water management issues. Every topic is actually invited to be entertained over here. I would like to thank our collaborators. This is organized by the FIU Institute of Environment. Myself and Candice are actually on the front leading these organizations. But we have also collaborators here at FIU. We have the UNESCO Chair on Sustainable Water Security at FIU, Addis Ababa Institute of Technology at Addis Ababa University is also our collaborator. Bahardar Institute of Technology at Bahardar University, the Nile Basin Disclosure, which is a state, an African-wide initiative, and also the Water and Land Resource Center at Addis Ababa University. We will be very happy to also welcome other organizations or institutes who would like to collaborate and co-organize this forum. So today's talk will be on Nile insight on the water storage, a little bit outside the water negotiations, outside the wrangling and the the current issues that is actually engulfing the Nile surrounding. There's going to be more about satellite applications. So we're going to be on the water storage in the Nile River Basin using GRACE and GRACE for data-driven and modeling. So it's going to be an application of NASA satellites that can be used for monitoring available water within the basin. And this will be given by Dr. Emad Hasan. I will be introducing him very shortly. So again, Dr. Emad Hasan is a research fellow at the Center of Space Research at the University of Texas. This is relatively the newest position he had. But to give you a little bit more about Emad, Dr. Hasan is a research fellow at the Center of Space Research at the University of Texas at Austin. Before that, he has been a postdoc in a few institutions. He has a PhD degree in hydrology and water resource from the University of Oklahoma in 2017. He has been a postdoc fellow at Binghamton University, State University of New York, and also at the University of Oklahoma. Dr. Hasan's research transcends different areas, particularly in the application of satellite and in-situ remote sensing for understanding terrestrial water cycles, land surface modeling, machine learning, and geospatial statistics. So his talk is really in one of these areas. He has authored a number of peer-reviewed articles and also book chapters. So I was able to actually identify him in a special issue that I was guest editing, and I found his paper, and I thought maybe this will be a very nice area to actually give a talk to our forum. And he has been also a guest editor in 2 special issues within the Remote Sensing Journal, and also he's an associate editor of the Journal of Hydrology. Today's session will be moderated by myself. I'm part of the FIU Institute of the Environment, and also Dr. Hisham El-Dardi. He is the University of Washington, Seattle. So we'll be exchanging time to actually ask questions and give comments. Hisham, if you remember, was our speaker from last month, and he has some very nice work also, who will be presenting in July. I'll be announcing shortly. So before we do that, I want you to really mark your calendars. We have some upcoming webinars. In about 2 weeks, Mohammed Bashir from the University of Manchester in the United Kingdom will give a talk on understanding the potential impact of GERD on floods in Sudan. So it's going to be a different perspective. What's the impact of GERD on the flood issue that is actually currently entertained by the Sudanese government? And Dr. Alam Gabriel will also give a talk on June 8th, particularly he's going back a year in the year 20 flood, and then how GERD reservoir impacts the 2020 year flood. If you remember, 2020 summer was the time where the first filling happened. So he's going to go back and look at into the flood issues when it comes to actually GERD. That will be on June 8th. Dr. Samu Mogas will be also on geosearches. It's going to be on hydroegoism and misinformation in the way of Nile GERD negotiations. So we're going to look into transcending the traditional approach to a long-term progressive cooperation. That will be on June 30th. We'll send actually formal invitations to all of you. And then on July 20th, we have Dr. Hisham El Radi, University of Washington, Seattle. He's also a co-moderator of this, this session today. We'll be announcing the title, but he will be giving actually on monitoring of the reservoirs, particularly HAD and GERD, using some satellites. He has developed the tools as part of his doctoral study, and he wanted to share with us on the outcome of that. So a few reminders, please note that this presentation will be video recorded. Please mute your microphone for the duration of the presentations, unmute to ask questions after the presentation ended and when the time comes for Q&A. And of course, if you would like to send some questions and comments, you can send it to me and also Hisham through the Zoom chat, and then we'll also entertain all those things. I think without further ado, I'm going to now invite Emad, Dr. Emad Hasan, to take the floor. Emad.
Thank you, Dr. Melissa. Hello, everyone.
Okay.
You can hear me, right?
Yeah. Candice, can you make him a co-host so he can share? Let me stop sharing mine. Okay.
Yep, he's the co-host. He should be able to share.
You can see my screen now?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Okay, hello everyone again, and thank you to Melissa for the nice invitation. I'm very happy to be joining the Nile Talk today, presenting some of our recent research. And as Dr. Melissa mentioned, he was actually the guest editor to this specific paper that most of my talk will be about. It's already published in the remote sensing about a month ago. Again, this is a bit early in the morning here in the US, so good morning to everyone in the US. Back home, good afternoon for our people back home, either Sudan, Egypt, or Ethiopia. And yes, so I will, just to save the time, thanks again for the nice introduction. My name is again Emad Hasan, and I am a research fellow at the Center for Space Research at UT Austin. And today's topic, I will give some insights about the remote sensing hydrology application from the perspective of satellite remote sensing, especially GRACE and GRACE follow-on mission on the water storage in the Nile. Basically, before I jump to the topic, I would like to introduce some of my background in this field. So most of my research that I've done so far included satellite in situ and model analysis to address the major grand challenge and the nexus between four major elements in the hydrological water budget, including climate and the anthropogenic impact, and how those impact exchange and in terms of the food and water availability and demands. So basically, I've been using different tools from stochastic hydrology perspective, GIS, geospatial analysis, and statistics time series analysis to address these issues in terms of the response, effect, frequency, and also the uncertainties in the data sets that have been implemented. Basically, also just to briefly introduce some backgrounds. All of us need water, and there is two major issues when in terms of the water from demand, availability, quality, and even the frequent natural disasters. And back home, where we have a very limited information in terms of data and with applications as well in these data sets to address these major issues to understand and manage the relationship between the available water resources, enhance the communication between policymakers, stakeholders, planners, in terms of the water management in our regions. So basically, satellite data came to the play and became the norms to address the limitation in the data to address most of the water-related issues in terms of the water resources management and the plans. And I'm trying to jump a little bit in these topics without getting further and technical details. So as I said, like water resources, we need water. There is a global population crisis. Africa is center of the crisis, and even our people back home in the Nile, most of the Nile countries also contribute to some sort of this issue by the increasing populations. So in terms of the demands, we need water. There is no available information. Global population increasing, and these all issues put a lot of hurdles in the available water resources and in the management scenarios as well. So most of my research that I've done so far is trying to use satellite data in terms of moving from different scales of interest, from even local to global scales. I've been working in some basic, some research-related water resources in lake levels, especially lake levels in back home and in the Nile, Lake Tana and the Lake Victoria region, and transboundary river systems in the Nile and the High Plains aquifer here in the United States. I've also worked in the water scarcity issue in Africa. We have a publication about that in the remote sensing as well, addressing the hydroclimatic viability in terms of at the basin scale, as well as at the water towers, major water towers in Africa, and as I said, in the global scales as well. Most of these research, or all of these research, have been implemented by addressing, including GRACE data, application of the GRACE data. So just a bit background of what GRACE is and how GRACE can help us to understand the terrestrial water storage changes in a more sophisticated way and more robust images. So GRACE is a joint mission between NASA GPL and GFZ in Germany. It's launched in 2002 and been the data being processed by 3 partner data centers, including the Center for Space Research, the center I work for now. So GRACE is a twin satellite that is approximately about 300 to 500 kilometers above the Earth's orbit. And it's using a microwave ranging system to monitor the gravitational change as a term of equivalent water height in centimeter per year, centimeter per month. So basically what GRACEs do here is 2 identical satellites have a fixed distance among them. It's about 200 kilometers apart. And as one satellite approaches any mass anomaly change, the mass anomaly start to pull the first satellite toward that mass and accelerate the orbiting rate of that satellite. And as the satellite approaches, the distance between both satellites increased. And basically, it being well monitored by a set of GPS satellite systems. And as the other satellite also approached the same sort of anomaly, it accelerated by the same amount of acceleration until it maintained back the original distance, the 200 kilometer distance. This kind of oscillation and fluctuation between the 2 satellites provide the anomalies that have been processed by the data centers and the the output, as I said, in the terms of the equivalent water height perspective. So GRACE being, as I said, available since 2002, most of the temporal resolution that available to the general community and the hydrological community is about 30 days temporal resolution, monthly scale. However, there are a number of centers-based products. There is what we call it weekly sliding window datasets, which is available in 28 days. A quick look product, which is available in 21 days, and a very recent high resolution MASCOM product that's available in 5 days. So as I said, most of hydrological communities since GRACE been released are using the 30 days GRACE datasets, and these other datasets, it's kind of within the data centers themselves, not available, publicly available yet. But I will show some of, like at the last slides, I will show some of the 5 days MASCOMs in this presentation as well. So, as I said, GRACE publicly available through the GRACE Tell Us that maintained by the NASA GPL website, and they have a number of products available and in different format. The native format of the GRACE in a GCM format, which is being processed to as a general spherical harmonics. There is another non or less common format, we call it JU format. And there's a number of other formats that very user-friendly. As I said, this is the most of the available format in either NetCDF, ASCII file, GTIFs, and all represent the equivalent water height centimeter per month. And these data are ready to use without any further processing, and it being already implemented in different hydrological applications. Also, GRACE being, since they released it, there's a lot of releases of this satellites. Most of the well-known releases are the release 5 and release 6. And each release of GRACE try to enhance the processing of the GRACE GRACE data to provide more enhanced information about the terrestrial water storage from one release to another. In fact, as I said, the most common release or the most updated release now is release 6, and the data centers also working on release 7 now. So these kind of enhancement in terms of the product, GRACE product, try to provide more reliable signals in terms of the data processing itself. So how we can GRACE, as I said, it's a non-imaging satellite. It's a satellite that measures the geopotential fields of the Earth's geopotential fields and translate the geopotential fields to equivalent water heights, and it provides a very good proxy of the closure water budget or the change in water storage in more sophisticated way, more than the regular water budget that address the input and the output of the terrestrial water storage or the regular water storage in terms of the precipitation, AT, and runoff component. It's as the general hydrological water closure includes more elements that for the input and output, especially the groundwater input and human input as well, which is to and the other also a number of outputs, including also the groundwater output and the human output of the hydrological systems. So as general relationship between the input and the output is the change in translate the change in the water storage. Those components that I'm highlighting here in this equation in terms of the groundwater and the human parts are very hard to address, and it's not very well reported in the regular water budget component. However, GRACE, in terms of the changes in the terrestrial water storage, can easily monitor the changes in those components anthropogenic related, and the component that related to the groundwater storage as well. So even superior to the land surface models, which are being also in the play to address or to provide some uniform data about the hydrological water budget. Land surface models also try to solve both energy and water budget information to solve the relationship between surface water and soil moisture, but it's very well, it's a bit constrained in the very top layers of the Earth's layers. In contrast, GRACE can see all these components easily, including the groundwater storage component. So, and as I said, in a more robust and sophisticated way to address the changes from the top of the Earth's surface to the deepest groundwater aquifer. So it includes, as I said, the regular water budget, as well as the information that comes from the hydrological model perspective. So how we can see the GRACE itself? GRACE can be like in terms of the terrestrial water storage anomalies here, it can be deterministically provides a overall evolution of the total water storage in space. All the things that I'm presenting, it's from our own research. This is like I'm not using outside examples, so I should refer that in the beginning. But like again, GRACE, as I said, can provide the information, the terrestrial water storage information in terms of the deterministic trend, and we can see it in a graded scale, as in that image, or we can try to see how the terrestrial water storage agglomerate and cluster around general positive hotspots and negative hotspots in terms of the overall directional water storage. This hotspot analysis is beyond the basin average and beyond also the distributed grid way to see the GRACE itself in terms of the regional distributed grids. From one perspective, the hotspot in that terms responds to what the actual satellite sees in terms of the changes in the gravitational potential fields, rather than the interpolated signals in between those high potential gravitational fields, as we are seeing here, those signals in the graded border. We still working to address the way that beyond, as I said, beyond the basin average and beyond the regular visualizing the terrestrial water storage in terms of the graded data sets in that sense. Some of the applications that have been using GRACE for so far is to address the general trends in the total water storage from surface groundwater perspective. Also look at the water availability all in Africa. This work will appear in a recent AGU book chapter. It's in production. And the water availability when it's already in the remote sensing journal. So which we try to provide a potential water availability storage using GRACE data in terms of scarcity and water availability levels in Africa, with some perspective on the future perspective as well. For one of the major limitations in the data sets that most of researchers are trying to benefit from GRACE and address this limitation is the data. As I said, the GRACE is very new data sets. It's back to 2002 up to 2020, with some gaps between the GRACE and GRACE follow-on mission, 1 year gap almost. So most of the research community try to extend the GRACE and develop long-term terrestrial water storage beyond GRACE era. However, there is no equivalent data sets that we can use on the ground that can totally provide same measurements like GRACE itself. So basically, research community, us included, are using two basic approaches to overcome this issue through statistical simulation. Either using some what we call it deterministic statistical approaches, in which two major approaches like the regular ARIMA model with some input variable, we call it exogenous variables, or using the seasonal ARIMA model in which we are using, there is no other implemented variable or inputted variable included, and the model trained particularly in the data sets itself to fill or to provide some additional measurements or fill the gap between the two GRACE and GRACE follow-on measure. The second approach is using a probabilistic approach in which we could train a model, a particular model. In that particular sense, we use a very well-known model called GAMLESS. That GAMLESS model can be trained to provide all possible quantile ranges of the available of the total water storage in all ranges, and we can use this information to extend the terrestrial water storage to further back. So we have published on the two topics. So this one, the ARIMA model with the exogenous variable, or in that sense, we extend the GRACE back to 1950, and the approach basically rely on using the available data point from GRACE itself and train the model, expand the training sets to plus 100 data points, generating those random data points, and train the model to simulate the possible scenarios as well using this ARIMA with exogenous data variables. The second approach, as I mentioned, that is published in the last paper, in which we used the seasonal ARIMA to just fill the gap, train the model from GRACE itself, use the actual data without importing any outside variables. And basically, we could use this information to easily fill the 1 year gap between GRACE and GRACE follow-on mission. I will come back to this figure later in the presentation. The GAMLESS as well was introduced in the same paper, in which we also used, we trained the model using climate research unit, precipitation and temperature data sets, and we use the training information to build a list of BDFs or probabilistic distributions, and use those probabilistic distributions to build the different quantiles and extend the data back to, as I said, almost a century ago. And we also use the same approach to build some forecasts on the future directions of the GRACE up to 2050. So also in terms of when we talk about modeling the time series can be modeled in terms of as a function of the trained, seasonal, or the random component with some degree of predictability. The most predictable component of the time series is the seasonal component in that sense, and the other component, the random and the trained component, will come less predictability power for the trend and the random component. The most or the least predictable component is the random component of the time series, and basically it affects the overall predictability when we talked about the simulation or the predictions of the total series. This applies to either the AIMA, the deterministic approach, or even the GAMNIS, the deterministic and the probabilistic approaches as well. And use those extended series, we could easily, this is part of this research already published, and we are working to publish the rest of it. So we could use the extended series to understand in more details the overall trends of the terrestrial water storage, as well as try to relate those changes to some of the teleconnections, the available teleconnections in the region. This is the Nile is included here. This is the 9 major transboundary rivers in Africa in terms of this particular example. But back to the Nile, I hope the first section of this presentation gave you some brief idea about what GRACE is and what we are doing with the time series, and back now to the main topic, which is the Nile itself. So as you may all know, this is a Nile Forum talk, and all of you know that the Nile is the center of the pressing issue between the upstream and downstreams nowadays. But like from a hydrology perspective, we try to understand the availability of the water storage using these satellite products and evaluate the available water storage across the entire Nile Basin, 2 major water tower regions, and the sub-basin areas as well. So in general, the Nile itself, as I said, has a major issue with the available water storage within it. One aspect, the larger latitudinal extent of the Nile itself. Other aspect, that the Nile is one of the lowest flowing river all over the world. We are likely the downstream nations that receives the majority of the water from the Blue Nile, is because most of the water in the Blue Nile Basin travel less distance compared to the water that came from the equatorial lake regions, and transpasses some of the very low plains, especially in the sub-basin areas, and in those what we call it water sink regions, lots of water being lost to evapotranspiration. And as I said, we try to look at the wide basin average terrestrial water storage. We've looked at, this is the time series, the total time series from GRACE, and this is the cycle component or the trend component from the same data sets as well, averages on the basin for the entire basin. As you may see, with reasonable fluctuation between numbers of ups and downs in the available water storage through the years. And recently, the Nile received like approximately 200 billion cubic meter just last year in terms of the water storage from as seen by GRACE. So what we try to accomplish here is, if we look at different individual storage component in the Nile, this is how the total water storage looks like, and this is based on CLSM, NOAA and surface model datasets. So basically, storage component-wise has a greater potential compared to the surface runoff, and just pay attention to the scale we are using here. So that's the total water storage or the terrestrial water storage component. And here's the surface, the ground water and surface water component. And here's how the distribution of those components looks like from also surface soil moisture and groundwater component at the pixel level from south to north. We tried to see the response of the total water storage to different variables, including fluxes, precipitation runoff, and AT. This is storage fluxes, flux component, storage component, including soil moisture, surface water, and groundwater component, temperature rated component, and NDVI, vegetation proxies, as well as the distribution of the population in the region. And we try to model the response of the TWS across the Nile in response to these different variabilities. This also was published in the Journal of Hydrology, in which we used a space-based model, that geographically weighted regression approach to model the response, different response of the terrestrial water storage trend, the one that you've seen, including like different component, surface, soil moisture, groundwater storage, and the response of that trend to the variability of each of these components. Grace sees the storage change in a distributed way, as I said, from south to north, from the upstreams to the downstreams, and also include the overall variability. So this is how Grace sees the TWS in the total water at the Nile Basin, and here's the variability, the degrees of the variability in the total water storage. Most of the high variability are reported in the south compared to low degree of variability in the northern part of the basin. Same image being confirmed by the follow-on mission as well. Still same pattern. Red is bad, blue or is little bit good in terms of the overall trends in the TWS, but with less variability. Most of the variabilities in terms of the follow-on eyes in the western part, Sud, including the Sud and the Bahr al-Jabal areas in the west of the Nile Basin, with also strong variability in the north as well. We've used this information to see the fluctuation of the grace, provide a grace-based drought indicator in the region from between the grace and grace follow-on missions, and we can see the propagation and the propagation of the overall trends in the TWS in terms of the drought stability indicator based grace approach, as I said, using the follow-on as well as the grace product. In terms of the numbers, if we just looking at what grace sees in terms of the overall numbers in the Nile, this is the entire average, including the entire basin. So overall, during the wet season, again, this is the entire basin. This is not the Blue Nile or versus the Equatorial Lake. This is include the entire basin average, and we've reached almost 300 billion cubic meter of water recently in some years. Dry season wise, I'm not looking at the chat. I'm not sure if some people are trying to. So in the dry season, also we try to see how the fluctuation in the overall losses during the dry season and the total storage, the loss and the gain in the wet and between the wet and the dry seasons as well. The rate of change, we also try to address the year-to-year rate of change in the available water storage in the region. As you may see, there is a huge year-to-year fluctuation compared to the overall fluctuation relative to the overall average, which also reflects some recent recoveries in terms of the available water storage. It reaches also, sometimes it reaches twice the available storage in the previous years. Particular basin areas like the two major water towers, especially the Lake Victoria and the Blue Nile Basin. And again, if we are seeing look at the scale in particular, so there is a substantial amount of water glaciers that in the lake, equatorial lake level, areas relative to the Blue Nile Basin, through the wet, dry, and even the total changes between the wet and dry season. In the Sud Basin, the two major water sinks, including the Sud Basin in the south and the main Nile in the north. Again, Sud Basin also lost most of the water being lost in the Sud Basin with an incredible amount of water. As I said, like this is the gain and during the wet, losses during the dry, and the overall average between, or the total losses and the gain between the dry and wet seasons. And as you may see, the also high water losses in the Sud Basin relative to the water losses in the upper or the main Nile region in the north. So back to the extending the time series, as I said, in this particular example, we've used the Gamlis model to build a sort of the different quantile ranges of all possible terrestrial water storage in the Nile, and we try to also see the overall fluctuation in the total water storage in the Nile during the wet, the dry, and the total the difference between both in the two seasons. As you may see, also historical wise, there's some sort of like three significant era of changes, of positive changes during the wet region. One particular or two particular eras of dry trends, and here is the total changes between the, as I said, between the wet and the dry. This is some general forecast of the possible trends in the terrestrial water storage up to 2050. With respect to the wet season, this is the expectation of how the wet seasons will looks like. The dry season overall will have no significant trends, and here's again the total changes of the between the wet and dry, using this same schemes to forecast the future trends in the terrestrial water storage. We've used this extended series to build a long-term drought severity indicator based on this extended GRACE data, the indicator back to 1901, and it was correlated and evaluated against other indicators, including precipitation anomalies and other meteorological and hydrological based drought indicator, including the SPI, SPEI, and other drought indicators. And it's worth mentioning that this is also the future fluctuation in terms of the severity of the future directions in the terrestrial water storage and overall the Nile. We've identified the total numbers of wet years relative to the dry years in the region. We've also identified the potential impact of the future impact of those fluctuations for the future. Overall, there is in terms of the recurrence and the severity in the regions, we can see that there is a less than 2% chances if we use the drought threshold, about 3% chances of extreme events. And also in the flooding as well, in terms of the flooding, it's also very approximately 1% chances of the extreme flooding in the basin, relative to the a very like high probability of normal conditions, either in the drought sides or in the flooding sides. And also we quantify some of the return periods in the basin. Basically, overall, most of extreme events has a very short return periods, according to these calculations, of approximate 6 years return period, and as I said, with a very low potentials of extreme events so far. So there is still potentials with these particular scenarios that we have here. As I said, some of the recent research that I've been working on is to use the high resolution GRACE product. This is the 5 days standard deviation of the 5 days mass cones from the CSR products, and we try. This is also how the 5 days see the change of the 5 days in the green ones. So and we try to see how the high resolution GRACE data will see in terms of the anomalies and the availability of the water storage in the basin. This is some of the current work that I'm currently working on, as I said, to further the application of the 5 days of this high resolution GRACE data in terms of addressing the water availability in transboundary river systems, and the Nile is one of them. Other things that I am also working in more details is looking at this is the Lake Victoria lake level fluctuations in the Lake Victoria in the south, in the south of the basin, and we'll try to see also the overall impact of the Owens Dam that been established in early 60s in the regions, in terms of a pure time series analysis using a fractal dimension analysis to understand that before and after the establishment of the dam that regulates the water storage in the basin. We've also working to with some of my colleagues now to try to write the whole story about the available water storage in both Nile and Tigris Euphrates, and see how the resemblance between the scenarios in both basins from also satellite perspective. I hope that gives you some of ideas of what is going on in terms of the how GRACE sees the changes and how Grace reported some humid phases in the Nile Basin. Also, in terms of the future water scenarios in the basin and some of the relative projections, and also the reported extreme, the probability of the extreme events in the region, as well as the reoccurrence intervals. I would conclude my presentation at this point. And again, thank you so much for your attention. And please, if you have any question, you may ask, and you may also reach me at my email at csrutexas.edu. Thank you again, and back to Dr. Milesi for.
Thank you very much, Emad, for the elaborative presentations and providing water storage perspective and future predictions based on GRESS and also other modeling approach. This has actually been an interesting work for some time, and we believe that it's going to be very useful information, particularly when it comes to the negotiations in terms of water sharing in the future, particularly if our politicians are interested in guiding the negotiations through science rather than through politics. So I found it very useful, and I believe also the audience will find it very useful. And now we will open the floor for questioning. Unless Hisham wants to jump in and maybe start with commenting and also any questions. Hisham is our co-moderator.
Okay, thanks, Asra. Hi, Emad. Thank you for your presentation. So yeah, it's really great to see the satellite over the Nile, and even you did it over the whole entire Africa, and this is actually great. Just have a couple of comments and also questions about especially about the scale where you did the analysis. So I see most of the scale you are trying to see the trend in the groundwater at the basin scale, and I'm wondering if is there an effect on the scale that you choose? For example, someone might be interested to see this groundwater at the aquifer scale rather than the basin scale, because, for example, when you show that there is the downstream countries like in Egypt, there is almost no groundwater because you are showing this at the basin scale over the Nile. But if we look more at the aquifer scale, then we might see like the Nubian aquifer, which is like one of the largest aquifers in the world, and this is the main aquifer that's providing the water in Egypt. So if you can just elaborate more about this scale, the importance of choosing the scale. One more thing actually is that I have it is about using the data-driven approach. It's really great because you include many parameters from the meteorological variables, and also include some of the anthropogenic impacts. Especially I see you have included the NDVI, or also the I think the population also you include both of them. What about the dams? Because probably the trend will be impacted in the future with introducing more dams into the basin. So this is possible to include, or maybe also the water management practices if Sudan is increasing the irrigation, or how this can be introduced into your stochastic or the time series analysis. Thank you, Emad. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Let me just add one question that goes along with this. It was asked by Dr. Thomas Denengo. So he said that many studies have showed that there is a tremendous groundwater resource in Egypt. Your result doesn't show this reality. Do you think your groundwater result is reliable?
Sure.
Yeah, now you can go ahead and respond to the comments and questions.
Okay. So back to the scale issue, and thanks for that three great questions, actually. So if I just go back to the slides, if you're still seeing the slides, there is a kind of, yes, here. So scale-wise, yes, there is, we are trying to see beyond the basin average, because basin average hide lots of informations. Most of the data analysis in terms of the grace actually are triggered by the basin averages. And one thing is, as I said, GRACE is not a regular imaging satellites. It's not like we cannot treat GRACE data as regular satellite data that has a regular footprint or regular resolutions, like most of the Landsat images that has like 30-meter resolution, 30 meter by 30 meter resolution. In that sense, GRACE does not have an actual footprint. The footprint that GRACE has basically is a arbitrary, it's not like actual footprint. They used to say, if you need to come up with a good conclusion, you need to use at least 3 pixels, because GRACE has a larger footprint, and it's with respect to the distance between the leading and the 2 satellites. Actually, the actual distance between, it's a factor of the actual distance of the 2 satellites. So basically, if you are interested to analyze GRACE data, you need a larger basin scale. And as I said, we try to go beyond the basin scale by introducing what we refer to as a hotspot analysis, in which we are retained back to the actual. So in fact, if you looked at these individual hotspots, these are the actual hotspots that being responded to, that the actual satellite has responded to. So those are the actual anomalies that driven the distances or the fluctuations between the 2 satellites in terms of how they imaging the Earth when they see the actual anomalies. And what the processing centers did is interpolating the distance or this distance between these kind of 2 anomalies. So one thing is you need a large scale, and as I said, we try to see beyond that basin scale, and hopefully this hotspot analysis would implement some new ways to look at the GRACE data in terms of a beyond basin scale wise. But to be safe, we need to use the as I said, at least 3 pixels by 3 pixels, and this is like 3 pixels by 3. It's you can imagine that each pixel, it's about 300 square kilometers in space. So this would answer the second questions in terms of including the small dams in the analysis, which is again gonna violate the footprint issue that I mentioned. So anything beyond this 300 kilometer, which will be in terms of the damming issues in of how GRACE sees that, would not be possible to include in the analysis. There are a lot of refinements happens in terms of downscaling of the GRACE, but I'm very sorry to report that the downscaling not being administrated by any of the GRACE data centers, because they are seeing the GRACE in another way that the public, the general community, the hydrological community are treating GRACE as if it is a pixel that we can downscale it to like 30-meter resolution or whatever resolution that we can produce based on actual downscaling schemes. And another aspect is also in terms of that scale, there are some potential high resolution gravity-based measurements that been out there. These are the future of the downscaling of the actual GRACE measurements, like the swarm satellite data and the other SLR satellite ranging satellites as well, that also could provide some proxy to help in downscale GRACE to work with a more finer resolution rather than using those sort of statistical downscale that, as I said, violate the actual GRACE footprint. For the other analysis, like the implementation of the data sets, you've mentioned, you was talking about this sort of data processing. In fact, we didn't include the damming as well in that, as I said, in terms of the damming activities, it will be very hard to incorporate in that sort of distributed analysis, also back to the scale issue. Regarding to the groundwater component, also in terms of the groundwater, there's a number of good studies that particularly in the Nubian groundwater aquifers, and it addressed the overall trends in the water availability in the groundwater aquifers in North Egypt. So in that sense, in our analysis, we haven't looked in details of the directional or the evolution of the available water resources in North Egypt, especially the groundwater trends. But if I am going to use this particular trend, it's actually it's a declining trend, and it's not in a good shape in terms of the overall availability in that sense. But I haven't looked at it in more detail. We are working in that particular research that I've shown in the last example, that we try to see the allocation of the different component. Here is how each component, surface, soil moisture, and ground component being distributed over the space. This is at the mass cone level. This is the 3 by 3 degree based analysis. So each of these pixels shows the actual contribution of which component is our groundwater storage, or soil moisture, or surface water storage, and so on and so forth across the basin. Yes, in fact, according to this, now there is, as I said, I haven't looked at the groundwater yet, but like, yes, this is how the groundwater storage looks like when we partition the terrestrial water storage to those components. And yes, there's a great potential that Egypt still has in terms of the groundwater storage. As I said, I've reported to the two sides, one based on the overall trends, and this is based on the partitioning of the TWS in two different components, soil, surface water, and groundwater storage. I hope this answers the three questions together.
Yeah, okay, thank you very much. I think in regards to the groundwater issue, maybe good to look into, GRACE provides you simply a change in geopotential or the gravity difference at two different points over a monthly basis. So partitioning that into a water equivalent and later on into surface and groundwater and soil moistures might be also the source of error for your result. Maybe just try to look into that one as well. That will be actually a challenge because it doesn't distinguish between surface, soil moisture, groundwater, and everything. Yeah.
That's correct, yes.
Okay, any other questions, comments? I mean, if you go into your last slide on your conclusions and recommendations, there was a question raised by the Medkun when it comes to the contribution of the Blue Nile. We talk about 57 to 60%. This is a little bit, sensitive for Ethiopia, which considers 85 to 86% is what we contribute. So you want to elaborate on that? That was a question from the Medkun.
Okay.
I think I can address that. 86 is
Wasan, let Emad address it. Thank you.
Okay.
And then maybe you can compliment on that one. Yeah. Emad, go ahead.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Okay. This is like the reported numbers, and as I said, when we do the analysis, like this is what. Let me go back to one of the first slides that has so. These actual calculations in terms of the contribution of each individual basin based on the water received at the main Nile, and 60% is kind of like a rough average of what being received in terms of the overall runoff at the as they measured it at Aswan Aswan stations there. If we treat the entire storage at the 80 billion cubic meter, around 88 billion cubic meter a year in terms of that average. However, as I said, one thing is these two towers, the Blue Nile Basin and the Equatorial Lakes, have kind of like if we calculated the overall precipitation amount at those areas in Ethiopia or the Blue Nile, Upper Blue Nile area, it's an average about like 900 millimeter a year, and it surpassed the 1,000 millimeter a year at the Equatorial Lakes. And as I said, one aspect that the contribution of the Blue Nile is higher. One thing is the distance that takes the Nile. I believe it takes 21 days to see the response of I may be wrong. Hisham can correct me if that number is incorrect. Takes, as I said, takes about 21 days to see the storage back in Aswan station, rather than the storage that comes from the Blue Nile and the Equatorial Lakes. The fact is, Equatorial Lakes receive more precipitation, receive more storage, but because of the distance, the travel distance, most of the storage being lost in the low areas in the Sud, relative to the very high gradient in the Blue Nile Basin in terms of the topography and how the water reaches. And as I said, we've looked at these storages in terms of the total water storage that also confirm that thing, that there's a huge potentials in the Equatorial Lakes relative to the Blue Nile Basin, as I said, but like there's lots of blends and a lot of implementation should be carried on to just minimize the water losses in those regions and maximize the benefit of this total amount of water that being received actually at the two ports, at the two water towers, actually, to benefit the entire basin.
Okay, I think if you look into the same slide on the right hand side where you said Blue Nile and Atbara are about 71%.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that's what I think the medical was asking. It should be more than that.
Okay.
Wasan, do you want to? Yes,
I want to elaborate on that just very quickly.
Okay.
Yeah, I think in terms of the numbers, it's okay. It's actually my research is showing the same. It's 57% for the Blue Nile. When you talk about the 86% coming to Egypt it's actually from the Ethiopian highlands altogether. So it's including the Atbara River, the Blue Nile, plus the Subat River, which is it's probably Emad is including it here within the White Nile. Within the White Nile, so the 86% is actually it's still the number. It's correct, but it's just maybe maybe it's a little confusing here in the on the map, but it's true. If we sum up the 14%, 57% plus part of this White Nile, it will get up to the 86%.
Okay, Wasan, you want to?
I was going to say the same thing. There is a general confusion. Ethiopia gives 86%, but 57 to 60% is from the Blue Nile. At Bara, Baro, Akobo, all that added up makes 86% of the whole Nile. So usually you see this White Nile on charts, but we should have, well, we should make other figures like this where what part of White Nile is from Ethiopia, from Baro, Akobo. So that way, when you add up Takaze, Blue Nile, and Baro, Akobo, you get 86. Sometimes people get confused. Ethiopia gives 86. It is not all from the Blue Nile. So the number is correct, 57 to 60.
Okay. Thank you for the clarification, yeah. Okay, any other questions, comments?
We can just go with the last. If anyone, if
Yeah,
no one has
go ahead,
any more.
Go ahead, Emad, go ahead.
Yeah, I think it's the last thing. Just I see the trend in the last couple of years in the groundwater storage. You show like there's an increasing trend. So, is there any physical reason or physical understanding for these trends? Because, is it like because of the increasing in the flow that's coming, or like precipitation related,
Yes.
or what is the key driver for this?
The key driver is the precipitation. Yes, increase in the precipitation, especially what causes the last year flooding in all over the Sudan area and other regions as well. In fact, mostly of this precipitation happens in the equatorial lake regions, and that drives this kind of potential increase in the overall storage that's been seen, as I said, by Grace. And this is the very highest peak that reaches in the overall storage in the Nile, as it's seen by Grace, as I said.
Thank you, Emad. Thank you very much.
Okay, there's another question from Dr. Shimon Wodorowski. The question is, some of the Basin time series shown an abrupt change around 2008. What is the cause of this change?
2008, the increase, you mean, or?
Yeah, hi. Toward the end of your presentation, you showed some time series for the different basins. You can go back.
Okay.
There were histograms for all.
This? Or I see. Okay.
If you can, I think.
Yes. Here. This.
This. Yeah.
Yes. Which?
Over here, for instance, you can see. Well, maybe it's that, or the next one, or the previous ones that look just the same. So here, let's say this one. This one. Around 2008, the total, you can, over here, the Lake Victoria, you can see that around 2008 or 10, it become positive.
So 2006 was a major drought year in Lake Victoria, and it like the lowest lake level reach in Lake Victoria reached in 2006. And starting 2007, 2008, it was a bit recovery since then in the overall storage. So, and this is actually the reason I was going to look in details about the actual cause of, this is the 2006 again, at the end of the time series in Lake Victoria, in terms of the lowest or one of the lowest data points in the total lake level variability in the Lake Victoria region. And yes, so the years, the subsequent years were a bit recovery to this historical drought that put the storage at the stake in the area was the minimum.
If you look in the next slide.
Yes.
So here also it's in the sub-basin around 2009. So it's positive and then it becomes negative mostly. And in the main Nile is the same. It says a transition.
2009.
So it's,
this.
yeah.
2000. This area, this particular.
Yeah.
Major, as I said, like South Basin has a substantial water losses actually. So whatever comes from equatorial lake being lost to evapotranspiration in the region. I haven't looked at the potential cause of these trends, but I may elaborate later on it. But like I haven't looked at if I'm given a reason that maybe for the general evapotranspiration pattern in the basin. I haven't looked at it.
In the main Nile, you can see also transition from positive to negative.
There is a huge decline actually in the overall water levels in actually been reported in Lake Nasser recently, and it has some consequences in the operation of the Aswan Dam. I believe my friend Hisham can elaborate also on that more. And yes, at the physical sense, I haven't looked at it yet also, but like I believe there was some consequences of this reported decline in the dam operation for northern Egypt, for Egypt. Hisham, if you can elaborate on that,
So is this for the main Nile? Are you considering the whole Nile or only the
no, the main Nile is
the downstream part?
Yes, downstream part. Yes, correct.
Yeah, I'm not sure, to be honest, because I mean most of the main Nile it's a very narrow river, and it's mainly the surface water. It's mainly surface water rather than any groundwater stored here. So probably and yeah, for the House One Dam actually it's reversed because the water level at House One Dam is increasing now. So it has been increasing since 2018. So recently it's increasing, not decreasing. And even from, I think for the last decade, the water storage at House One Dam is increasing a little bit. So I know about 2012, it went down the water level at House One Dam. It went down to to a very low level, but for the last 3 years, I know there is an increase in the highest one dam storage. So I'm not sure if this trend is having any link with the operation of highest one dam or not. I mean, it might be the Nile Delta as well, because I think probably you are including the downstream.
Yes, it's a further to north, correct? Yes.
Yeah, it might be there is more water using for irrigation, maybe in the downstream in the Nile Delta. Maybe that's might be one reason.
Yes.
Can it be groundwater extractions? The surrounding the delta, the Nile River, not necessarily the Nile itself.
Yes, I think it might be one reason, because the main Nile, most of the water use and most water extraction is happening in the downstream and the Nile Delta, whereas most of the irrigation and agriculture is happening in Egypt.
All right, thank you.
Hisham, will out of basin water transfer might be a factor over here in the last few years? Well, is there any major contribution on that part?
You mean basin transfer from outside the basin? Yeah, I'm not sure actually if there is any basin transfer. I mean, Egypt is transferring the water somewhere else, or
No, no.
Yeah, I mean, yes, I mean, there is major canals that actually they move water off of the main course, which is a
haven't
very
started.
public data.
yeah. No, yeah, I have no clue about that. I'm not
Okay,
sure about
okay. Yeah,
about
I know.
the basin transfer. Yeah, for in Egypt.
I think maybe there is the Grace has a very large footprint, so you don't necessarily see anything just along the Nile. You have contribution from area surrounding, like maybe 100 kilometers on both sides of the Nile. So it's an integrated. So if you assume everything comes from the Nile, maybe that's not the right assumption here. You have to take into account other processes that can change that.
Exactly.
That also one possibility, but this analysis, there's two different versions when you are process or analyze gas, either using what they call it spherical harmonics or the mass concentration blocks. And the reason between they provide this sort of different data types is try to constrain the leakage of the storage outside the pixels. And I believe maybe some of this leakage may be inherited in some sort of this analysis. However, this was done on the mass con levels, not on the not using the spherical harmonics one, which has also a higher signal leakage in terms of the total water storage. And one aspect of this presentation is also we try to compare, as I said, the overall trends in terms of the water losses and the gain in two major water sink region. As I said, this is the Sod versus the main Nile sort of comparison. But it was to look at it in terms of the physical comparison. I've been trying to get myself out of the Nile research since I've started my work on the Nile as a topic in my PhD, and I still cannot get out of it. Even when I start to analyze data for the high resolution GRACE data, I still look at the Nile. It's still being driven by whatever happening in that Great Basin. So as I said, this is the example. So they assigned me some work, and I still bring that work to the Nile as well. So it's kind of towards look at those kind of directions in terms of the physical interpretation of those trends in those series. But thank you so much for elaborating on that and question those kind of directions. It helps a lot.
Okay, thank you, Emad. And another question, maybe you can jump in, is regarding the probability of flood and drought occurrence. Even though they are very small, the impact can be quite substantial. This is a question from Gabriel. He says, any suggested mitigation measures?
This is this is mostly out of the scope of my. I didn't like have some any directions on that on those kind of management scenarios that should happen in the region, but like we could use those information to better manage the situation in the basin in a more collaborative sense. Further, the collaboration between upstream and downstream nation is kind of very required. Hopefully, people will get aside from politics and start to collaborate together. We are all sharing the same water, same basin, same everything, and we are also challenged by the same challenges. Climate is challenging all of us. So it is not Ethiopia's problems versus Egypt or vice versa. It should be some sort of collaboration, and this management should be been like at the priority of the decision makers in the region. Hopefully, they would listen to the science, as you've mentioned, Melissa, in the beginning. But like on my side, this is some of the some of kind of good scenarios, if we can say that, in terms of the probability of those occurrences in the region, and as well as the recurrence intervals, which is almost like a very short recurrence intervals of those events. And most of these recurrence intervals, by the way, is related to near normal conditions. So most are, the basin is still in a good shape, but we need to collaborate in what was given to us in the region, not just fight on something that we could easily solve with the collaboration rather than fighting on those things.
Yeah, I agree with you, Emad. I think we have a lot of information, we have good data. I think we can really make use of this to really somehow get us closer, particularly the three downstream countries, and work together and somehow reach a consensus. We have a lot of water. According to predictions, there is actually quite substantial amount of water.
That's correct.
And if we can somehow maybe a little bit, refine the scale and maybe somehow, use observed data also to validate further your work, I think that's very reliable results that we can use in order to actually enhance the negotiations between the three countries. Any other questions? Any other comment? Okay, it has been now, it's now almost 9:30. It's actually 9:30. Thank you very much, everybody, for coming. Hisham, you would like to say a few words before we close it?
No, thank you, Asfa, for inviting me for this session, and thank you, Emad. It's very great, and congratulations for your new position.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Emad. Thank you, everybody, for coming. We really are very happy to see you every month. So we'll send more reminders about the upcoming events and talks, as I mentioned earlier in my introductions, but we'll send formal invitations to all of you. Please invite others. Please also let me know if you want anyone to come and speak at our forum. We are very open. We would like to entertain science, good data, and also dialogue. So thank you very much again for coming, and we'll see you in 2 weeks. Mark your calendar. May 17 will be by Mohammed Bashir. It's going to go about GERD and its impact on flood in Sudan. So that will be on May 17 again, 8 a.m. New York time or Miami time, and then look into your time. We are trying to accommodate everybody, particularly in the Basin countries. That's why we are making it early in the morning here. I know it's very early for those of you a little bit west of us, like Emad is. It was 7 a.m. in the morning when he actually jumped into his talk. But we're trying to include everybody, particularly from the Ethiopia, Sudan, and Egypt, and also our European colleagues and from Asia. Thank you very much again. Thanks a lot. We'll see you in 2 weeks. Yeah.